So I will start by dipping the entire dish in the black glaze. So I need it in a wider container than my bucket. And if you have a lot of glaze and you can use an even bigger container, it makes it a little easier to dip the pot, but this will work. So this is going to be a little tight, but as you can see, I waxed the whole bottom of the pot to keep glaze from sticking there, and I can just go back with a sponge now and wipe off the little beads of glaze. And then I can touch up my finger marks. This glaze also is pretty forgiving. It's not going to show little runs and these little runs and drips and overlaps, or where I've patched it. So the pattern I'm going to use on this is based on dividing the space into 4 parts. And since this is already a 4-cornered pot, that sort of makes sense to me for this. But I'm going to do 2 segments interlocking. The first thing, just to help my eyeball a little bit, I'm going to use that decorating disc again and center it. And I'm just going to sort of approximately center this dish on the banding wheel and then approximately center the disc in the dish. It doesn't have to be absolutely exact. So that's close enough. So then I've got I think of these as the diagonal corners for the outer ring, but I'm going to use the axes here for the inner circle. And I'm just using the pencil marks to guide my eye when I go to start trailing. So this will be a repetition of the pattern in the bowl of leaf form this way and then this way into the corners. I'm not sure how clearly the pencil marks show up, but the glaze will show up really well. Sometimes some of this I can do on the banding wheel, but sometimes it's easier just to hold it in my hand. Of course, I can run into a challenge of running into the corners of the pot. It can get a little gymnastic sometimes, trying to fit my hand in the trailing bottle inside the form of the pot. The thickness of this overglaze affects the line quality that you get. This is a little thinner than I would like it, so I'm getting these lines. These lines are sort of spreading out a bit more than I prefer. If the overglaze were a little thicker, the lines would be more raised and kind of sharper. And that's just something, as you work with the material, you start to get a feel for what works for you, what's comfortable in your hand, and what gives you the line quality that you're after with any particular pattern. This band area, I generally leave that calm and then go back to work up here and at the rim. So I'm just going to do a couple of simple border bends. And the banding wheel makes it a lot easier to get these lines kind of with a nice flow. And then I'm going to pencil out, I'm going to think for a minute how I want this to go. So I'm just going to mark a couple of spots to guide my eye, just the middle spots, and then start making this leaf form again. around that border edge. And one thing I like about this shape, when you're serving food, you know, you can fill this all the way up to the top, but if you don't, if it were only filled to here, then this area becomes kind of a frame for the food that you're serving. And it looks really nice. It doesn't look half full, it looks decorative. And again, with this trailing, as I mentioned with the blue bowl, it's pretty important that you put the overglaze on when the base glaze still has a little bit of moisture on it, because otherwise this is going to start to want to lift off the base glaze, either as you're applying it or even worse, in the glaze kiln, so that you take it out of the glaze kiln with little bare spots on it where the glaze has crawled off. So everything sort of equally, if the base glaze has a pretty good amount of moisture, so there's not a big discrepancy between this wet overglaze and a dry base glaze, you're going to be better off. So on the outside, I'm going to use the same building blocks of the design, just in a different configuration around the walls of the pot. So once I have the exterior walls done, then I'm going to go back and do the inside of the handles and the rim. And I leave that for last because it would be really easy to mess that up when I was doing the outside. So I'm just going to do a little bit of crosshatch motif and then sort of a little swimmy guy form, which is just the shape that the trailer makes, you know. And to me, the most wonderful slip-trailed pots are the sort of 18th century English slipware, where that was slip that was under a glaze, and where they didn't have a tool as easy to use as this kind of squeeze bottle. I'm going to go back in here and have them go in the opposite direction just for fun. And you will see shapes like this and like this crosshatch in the English slipware. Very wonderful pots to look at. Okay, that is about as busy as it can be, except now I'm going to go back. I think it needs one more band in here, so I'm just going to go back on the inside and do that. I guess one thing I like about this technique, the way that I approach it, is that I've done these many, many times, but there is always an element of improvisation about it, which keeps it lively and interesting for me. So there, that one is ready to go in the kiln.